Hello and welcome back once again to the Single Malt Review. Summer has it has broken, it has come out, the clouds have parted all at once, and now we're getting it really hot and sweaty once again, which you can enjoy down the other end of the camera there, as we get a little bit shiny over here. But before that happens, we've got something a little more analytical to do today. We've got a bit of industry quality control. What have you brought to class, Dave?
Well, we've got some Jim Beam. It has been a while since we did a Jim Beam by Jim Beam, as in something from Beam Distillery with the actual Jim Beam branding. Here we have the Jim Beam Black in two incarnations. Black being one of their slightly older version of the what we'd otherwise think of as a regular Jim Beam, extra aged. And now, until quite recently, this was an age statement 8-year-old bourbon.
As we can see, or maybe not, depending on how the camera likes to play along, used to be 8 years old, so a pretty good, cheap, age-stated bourbon.
But what we're going to do, we're going to start with the current incarnation, which is simply labelled as extra aged, and is now only about 6 years old. There's no particular number on the label anymore, but many minutes of intense internet sleuthing confirmed that yes, it is indeed about 6. So, it's 43%, both from 43, which is good for consistency. Available in these tiny, oddly plastic 50ml miniatures.
Coming to aeroplanes and hotel rooms near you. It's a bit of you're kind of cheating calling something that was formerly 8 years old that is now 6 extra aged, because that's almost 30% off, really, when you think about it. It's sort of, they should call it not quite so extra aged.
Well, in some labellings, in some markets, this is sold as triple aged because it is 3 times as old as the bare legal minimum for Kentucky straight bourbon, which I think is a bit of a cheat. So, yeah, we're starting with the younger, newer version. Just to so hopefully we'll maybe have more impression of the difference in quality as we go to the
I'm really hoping that we don't see too much of a drop in quality between the two, because this is actually one of my kind of go-to bourbons. If I want a cheap, fairly decently quality bourbon, which I know is going to be over 40%, these are both 43, that has not changed, and formally with an age statement on it. This is the one I reach for because it's by far the cheapest, but that's still an option for me, and it will be for the next few months, because given in our location, how sort of far we are behind the main market, there's still heaps and heaps of the 8-year-old version of this left. You can find it in any given sort of shelf on your liquor store. But the time will come when it does run out, and if the quality drops, I won't be very happy, because I might have to look for another sort of house bourbon to find.
Well, the Jim Beam Signature Craft is still quite a bargain for a 12-year-old age statement bourbon, as we tried it before.
That's true. We did like that one. That one's sort of, we say the one to beat, but if any of these come out higher than that, then the 12 has an imminent problem. But
anyway, on to the 6-year-old extra aged. Well, that's smelling like some bourbon.
It's smelling like Jim Beam as well. Jim Beam, I find the sort of younger and cheaper it gets, the more you get that sort of, this is definitely Jim Beam aroma start to come out.
There is a degree of harshness there. The spirit hasn't fully mellowed as it would from the extra few years of aging. Yeah,
and so beside from cryptically saying it smells like Jim Beam, I'd say there's really, really dominant sort of vanilla and caramel, and
I'm getting cornflakes.
Yeah, quite a lot of sort of dry grain and dry oak. It's a pretty dry nose once you get past that vanilla. And there's quite an edge to it as well. There is the twang. There's the twang of young spirit in here, just sort of scraping up the nasal passages.
Oh man, that is really harsh for a bourbon that's only 43%. That is rough and sandpapery.
Yeah, that's got a bit of a lash to it, which is not... It's not necessarily a point against it for bourbons. Bourbons are supposed to be a little fiery, but yeah, it
used to bourbons of significant age being incredibly smooth for their strength.
It is
comparatively young, not comparatively low strength, but still it's delivering some fire.
Not what you'd call mega smooth, no. Anyway,
it's reminding me of a very young Scotch whisky, or a Scotch blend with a lot of quite young grain whisky. That same kind of a almost slightly acrid harshness to it.
I'm almost going to say, even from memory, that's tasting different to me, and not in a hugely great way either. But
there is some smooth, soft sweetness creeping in afterward. It's kind of the finish is just a bit more pillowy and marshmallowy than the initial first impressions.
if anything, that tastes like a proper strength version of the embarrassingly 38% ABV, not even legal to sell in America, Jim Beam White Label, which has that I will forever associate with Coke mixers because one is almost synonymous with the other. This one, way more in that direction. I think, but I may just be looking back on my old favourite, keeping the back of the cupboard bourbon with rose-tinted glasses. So what we'll do is move right along to the other one. I suppose we should score this one first in the absence of judgment, just to see what they get in a fair playing field. Have you got any initial thoughts?
I haven't actually. I wasn't sure how I was going to score these. I was perhaps going to try them both and see if it was just a single score to apply to Jim Beam Black generally, see if there's enough of a difference for me to discern. But
this being the Jim Beam Black going forward, being the other one being something that is going to go away, I'd be inclined to score them separately because this one here will be the relevant score.
Yeah, hopefully not. We do about a difference in ages. There will be a more pronounced difference, which will lend itself to entirely separate scores for two. So, this one. It's drinkable, but it's really quite rough, not nearly as engaging as we know an older Jim Beam can be. So, not without merit though, and it gets 73 from me. Yeah,
that's kind of where I was going too. It just doesn't have a lot going for it. It's not particularly compelling. It's fiery, but it doesn't have a huge weight of body or a huge amount of flavour. It really is just damn close to a stronger version of Jim Beam White Label.
Yeah, it is just towing that line. It is very close to just being the bog standard no age statement.
That's just not quite enough, really. So let's see what it's got to beat. I should probably even give it a score, which is a 75 from me. So pretty well easy to beat there, we should think, and we'll see what its counterpart can do.
See what the extra 2 years have done.
Yes, indeed.
There's a pronounced difference in colour. There's significant.
Yes, actually, we should have done this up front. But as you might expect, for a whole 2 years younger, and you may or may not be able to see that. I apologise if you can't. The 8 is conspicuously deeper coloured than the unaged, no age statement.
The approximately 6. Thank you. I'll do a side-by-side once I've got some in the glass. Oh, blimey, that's...
Even deeper once it's in the glass.
Yeah. We don't know what effects maybe from the different grades of plastic possibly in use in these minis. So used to glass, I've been a bit spoiled there.
I'd say we're dealing with the same food-grade plastic in these.
That is like the difference between a IPA and a best bitter if you're going on beer colour terms. There's a pronounced degree of extra darkness in the older bourbon. Oh, that smells a bit more.
Yeah, this is a different whiskey.
There's now some treacle and molasses creeping in on top of the. There's still a little bit of that youthful spirit fire, but after 8 years, that is getting on as bourbon goes, and it's starting to really mellow.
This is tragically good compared to the other one. It's got a depth of flavour. It still has the same sort of high points in there. There is vanilla. And then there is oak and spice and caramel, but there's just so much more depth to it. There's this lovely wood char to the whole thing. There's more layers of vanilla. The spice actually makes itself known. There's cinnamon and clove, which you'd expect from a nice bourbon. Suddenly you're smelling real bourbon, real sipping bourbon.
Sort of a mulled wine around a campfire thing going on with the spices, a little bit of sweetness and fruit, and just some good woody smoke. Yeah, and the difference on the tongue is stark as well. There's still an odd amount of fire, more prickle than I was expecting, but...
It's got a warmth, but it earns it this time.
Yeah, it is smoky and sweet, generous amounts of wood, good lashings of spice. You've got your usual cinnamon and ginger, vanilla, and some cloves and nutmeg. There's a lot going on in there.
It's oakier It's way longer. There's so much more. There's so much more evidence of nice char to it now, which does a great deal to offset a quite sweet bourbon from becoming too sweet. It is just so much better.
Yeah.
That's really depressing, actually. I can't believe they did this to my favourite cheap bourbon. This used to be where nice bourbons began for me. Oh well. Yeah, that's tasty all of a sudden.
Yeah.
In a way that makes me really, really sad. This one I would score very easily an 83. We're drinking good bourbon now. It's as simple as that, and we weren't previously. And I think that score really reflects the jump there, or rather the drop in quality, because this is not the direction they've gone. We'd be celebrating if it was. This is the we're looking at a significant fall off in quality now. What do you
This
think?
one rises up to an 80 for me.
Yeah.
It's still got a significant amount of heat to it, a bit of roughness, which, despite the 8 years of age and the relatively modest 43% ABV, it doesn't have that developed smoothness and the heft that comes from an older, stronger bourbon. But 80 points reflects that it's still, it is a really affordable, accessible age statement bourbon without being super old, super exclusive. It's got plenty of flavour, there's plenty going on, despite it's well, at the time.
What I
huge
should have
availability.
done is seen whether there was any change in the price. I'll bet there wasn't.
These miniatures were identical in price,
Yeah.
so it's not much to
I'll
go
bet
on,
the
but
price has not changed, but
Yeah.
I think anybody, reviews subjective as they are and individual as they are, I don't think you could give these two bourbons to anybody that wasn't on the Jim Beam financial board and get the opinion back that the new rendition was not even better, but even remotely comparable. I think it has massively dropped, and the scores reflect that. That's a pain. That really is a pain. Beam now being a Suntory-owned company, I don't think that's a fantastic look. Suntory, obviously starting up in Japanese whiskey, they've broadened significantly since then, but they have a fairly good reputation as a quality-focused company. So I think making sort of gouges like this and some of their most popular ranges is probably not a good idea, because it means troublesome people on the internet like us will come and point it out, and I think so we should. So whether this is now being out long enough for there to be a sort of a movement of backlash against it, whether they've seen sales drop off, they're certainly going to see mine drop off, because once I've chewed through all of the available stock of the 8 I can get here, I'll probably be moving on to something else, I suspect, because I think I'll be able to do a little bit more for my money regards that. So anyway, I think that's very telling. I think I wasn't sure how much of a difference we were going to see, but
it is good being right here at the tipping point and having a chance to do what is essentially a vertical tasting of two similar but different enough Jim Beams, the 6 versus 8, to be able to nose them and taste them side by side like this and see what a difference that extra little bit of maturation makes. You don't normally get to sample that degree of specificity when you're looking at how a particular whiskey, bourbon, whichever type it may be, evolves over time. And this is a good snapshot of basically the same product at different ages. And it's, nice to have that opportunity.
Yeah.
Because it's pronounced. The degree of difference here, it's stark, and it's really, actually, genuinely interesting.
Oh well, pleasing that we were able to determine the difference. Sad that it went the way it did. So, oh well, pour one out for my old Jim Beam, your old homie over here. It's gone now. No, actually it was into my glass, not going to waste it. Far too scrubby for that. Slunge it, we'll be right back.